Brian, you're one of the best, smartest attorneys in the country. You certainly follow all these topics at a very high level. So let's start just with Mueller right now. And the Mueller report and Attorney General Barr. What's going to happen there? Can Barr actually go to jail? Can this end up really going bad, or is he on good legal ground?
Well, first, you're too kind, Julio. I think one of the reasons you say that, though, is I hate the billable hour, which puts me in a very big minority of lawyers. To answer your question, anything, unfortunately, and probably everything we're going to talk about today is legally possible. So when you're listening to legal analysts across the TV spectrum or in media, they're all doing what we do as lawyers, which says is technically it's possible. Could Barr technically go to jail? Yes. For being held in contempt, anybody could. Any of the three of us could if we were held in contempt. Why won't he, in my opinion? I've read the Mueller report, as you know, Julio. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you what's not been reported in media. The reason that Mueller did not make, and he didn't, make a definitive determination on obstruction is it's clear in reading it, he believed there is a plausible case. Doesn't mean that he believes a case could be made, but a case could be potentially presented that the president obstructed justice by intimidating witnesses using Twitter. I know it's not been reported out there. I've talked about it a little bit. But if you read the report, there's tons of citations to @real Donald Trump. First question we have to ask ourselves, should Twitter and talking about people on Twitter be a reason for a federal investigation? I'd argue as a lawyer it's not. I think it actually makes the Mueller report look less credible when you read it. And the fact that ultimately they're looking for additional information in that report, the redacted portions, is a complete fishing expedition. Barr knows it. He knew it that weekend when he wrote it and made the determination that there was not obstruction of justice, that you're not going to impeach a president, which is the remedy to actually remove a president for something that you think is criminal, based on his tweets, Donald Trump's tweets on Twitter about Michael Cohen, Paul Manafort, etc. Now, you and I have also talked about my legal advice to my clients, which is be careful what you do in social media. Because really that, again, what people are not reporting is there are over 25 citations in the Mueller report to @real Donald Trump and his tweets as Mueller was trying to put together a case saying when Trump said something negative about Cohen before he was going to, or after he was going to testify, that was witness intimidation.
Okay, so now, they're going after Barr and basically saying that they need the full report unredacted. Are they, the House, of course, are they on ground there? Do they have legal recourse for that?
Yeah, the House, Congress can. Unfortunately, Congress, I say unfortunately, we wouldn't have probably said that 100 years ago. Unfortunately, Congress right now has their authorities that go back to the initiation of our Constitution. They are the regulatory body for this type of stuff. So yes, they can press this, they can push it. That said, what the president's doing and his legal team, I think, is very wise. They're putting up roadblocks, they're objecting, they're making subpoenas be issued. And ultimately, Julio, my belief is this thing could definitely go out past the 2020 election. Why is that important? I think the American people deserve a right to vote and determine, do they really care at all anymore about Russia? Because at the end of the day, what the Mueller report was 100% on point and agreeable with is that President Trump was not a double agent Russian spy. You take that off the table, does any of the rest of it matter?
I don't know, Karen?
What I think a lot of this is just posturing for the 2020 election. I mean, a lot of this is about creating a narrative that's negative towards the president in whatever way they can. It's grasping at what's left of the Mueller report because it wasn't what they said it was going to be. It wasn't what we all watched. We all sat there sort of waiting to see this big, giant smoking gun. And as it fizzled and as there was nothing, it's like they're grasping on the remains of what's there in any way that they can to affect the 2020 election. And I think in some ways, it's just still a witch hunt on the president because they're looking to influence voters.
Karen, I agree completely. If you guys remember the movie The Karate Kid, I'm an Italian guy, so Ralph Macchio is somebody I looked up to. It's coming back now with Cobra Kai on YouTube. Not that I'm affiliated with YouTube, but anyway, it's a great show. In Karate Kid, it was sweep the leg, right? When Ralph Macchio's character, Daniel Ralusa, was winning and he was going to do his crane kick and he was going to win this tournament, the bad karate coach says to his team, sweep the leg. Everything you just said, Karen, is sweep the leg. What it looks like, and I really do believe in the swing states, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, folks that are working every day, this stuff looks like sweep the leg. It doesn't look credible. What looks credible to them, and I know this is an illegal opinion, but it's how's the economy doing? What really looks important to them, and Julio and Karen, you know this is an issue for me because I represent a large amount of my practice is healthcare. They care about healthcare. And I find it interesting that the Democrats are continuing to push the Russia theory. They're now, I know we're going to be talking about it all over again, the president's taxes. Seems to me they're trying to start to hide away from the Obamacare litigation that's still out there and folks in their party that are all running around Medicare for all.
It's all creating a narrative. It's PR 101. It's creating a narrative that suits them for the election of 2020. And they have to make something out of what's left in this big pile of garbage that was the Mueller report. So they're trying to make something from nothing. And I think that's really what it's become. It's become so much about weaving this narrative. And you know what's interesting is you brought up social media culture. That's something that we have not experienced before the last election. That really didn't exist before that in the way that it does today. And the voters are influenced by it. And, you know, some of the decisions that have been made in social media over the last few weeks in the news with the censorship of conservative voices is something that's there also, again, to influence elections. And I hope that the voters can keep in perspective. I like to be optimistic that American voters are pretty smart. So we can look forward to 2020 in a lot of ways then.
Yeah, Karen, I agree. It's a great point. And again, what I was getting at the beginning of this is there's a big debate here. Because Twitter 10 years ago, yes, Twitter was around, but we weren't talking about Twitter in the election in 2008 between John McCain and Barack Obama. And I'm telling you, guys, the Mueller report, whole case, if there was a case, if that thing had actually proceeded and he had recommended obstruction, his grounds for obstruction were the tweets by Trump about Cohen and about Manafort. And to explain it to the audience, what Trump was tweeting, what the president was tweeting, and probably remember, it gets a lot of media, right? Is, well, Michael Cohen's a good guy, he's got a great family. Then something goes adverse with Michael Cohen after he testifies, and the president was tweeting something else. Our country, you know, we have a First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech. Twitter's freedom of speech. What you were just getting at, Karen, are some conservative voices, I think they are, being shut down. I think the dialogue here is what a president does, what a public figure does in social media. Can that result into criminal conduct? No one's talking about that, but that is what the Mueller report was. I mean, I challenge these Democrats and the lawyers that lean left on this. If you really look at the report, the whole finding was the president was intimidating people on social media. And I just don't know that that should be criminal conduct in the United States.
Yeah, I don't know. Brian, so bottom line here, what happens with Barr, the House? How does this get resolved? Where's it going to go?
I think the president's got, I mean, look, we call it in my practice as a general counsel and counsel to corporations, and as you know, Julio, to businesses and executives, is reputational risk. The president has very low, in my opinion, reputational risk. He's been investigated more than any president in U.S. history. So if you had a president where there were findings beyond what I keep bringing up, which is Twitter, and there actually had been some real connection to Russia, or unbelievably, he had been a spy or something, of course, this could be going in a really bad direction for him. My opinion, Julio, is it's going to continue. The Democrats aren't giving this up. It's that sweep the leg. They have to win at all costs. So they're going to continue to press for information for the redacted portions of that report. In my opinion, it is going to get held up in the courts all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, up and probably after the 2020 election.
So this is going to go on forever, it seems like, Brian, and it means that nothing else is going to get done.
Yeah, and that's really, look, why does everybody hate lawyers?
That's the crime.
Right, and why does everybody hate lawyers? I mean, there's a whole bunch of lawyers in this. You've heard me say it before, that the president's stuck in the Jurassic Park of lawyers with raptors and T-Rex. This is lawyer games. This is litigation. It's litigation by the Democrats. It's litigation by these different committees to try to, what we call, crawl through glass, make the president come to his knees and settle with them. And really what their settlement is they want him, I think, to drop out of the race, which we know he's never going to do. Or they want to wound him so badly that, as Karen said, he's going to potentially be harmed in 2020. My belief, though, Julio and Karen, and this is, again, it is a legal opinion because I used to try cases in front of a jury. Right now, the president's looking awful good in front of the jury, and they are looking awful petty. The more they push this Russia thing, and look, as a character witness, William Barr is not fully connected into the history of Donald Trump. He worked for George H.W. Bush. He's a legal scholar, well established, trying to really defame as what we saw with some of the senators and the House folks in the meetings with him. I think that's incredibly detrimental to them, and it's ultimately going to hurt what they're trying to do.
So, Brian, I'm just going to jump in here for 1 second, Karen. You think that, obviously Barr is not going to give it over. And I guess what you're saying is this is going to go way past 2020.
Yeah, Barr is not going to give this over. The precedent, if he does, is, and Barr is a constitutional law guy, which we need to respect. He does not want a precedent established here that you can start getting redacted materials for a report like the Mueller report simply for a political purpose. Now, ultimately, again, going back to your very good first question, Julio, legally they probably can. But I do think that the White House is doing the right thing and the administration is doing the right thing and fighting this all the way through, because I challenge anyone to tell me, is the purpose actually not political?
Okay, Karen.
It started out as opposition research. That's what it was at the beginning. That's what it is now. I think that if you put it in simple terms for the American people, they will vote again. This has been going on well before the last election. And look what happened. Donald Trump became our president. So I think it's pretty likely that the voting population is going to come out in droves in 2020 if the Democrats don't rewrite the narrative in some way where they're not just beating this Mueller report to death.
I agree, Karen. And I'll tell you one thing. People want to say how they can fix this. How did all out of this start? Remember Michael Avenatti? Remember Stormy Daniels? The president got sued in civil court, not for anything he did as the president, for wanting Michael Avenatti allegedly wanted to help his client. I don't know what his motive was. We all know what he has been exposed to be. But he goes out and files a suit to try to say that the settlement agreement between Stormy Daniels and the president needs to be declared invalid. That was in civil court. What would be the fix for this? And it's something, quite frankly, that Bill Clinton has supported. I believe that sitting presidents should not have to be involved in civil lawsuits for the time period that they're president. Let me make that clear. That's not criminal investigations. That's civil lawsuits. And it's not that Stormy Daniels couldn't bring her suit. Let her bring her suit in 2021 or 2025 when President Trump is out of office. Why? If you did not have that lawsuit, you did not have Michael Avenatti's discovery on Michael Cohen, where would we be today? I'm telling you, a lot of this would have been shut down. And the president, and I think we're probably going to get into this a little more, guys, there's still lawsuits from way before about Trump University, about a host of other things. All this is doing is distracting somebody who's been duly elected to help run our country.
It's insanity, the amount of litigation that takes place, and the fact that, again, this in very simple terms, I think, as a lawyer, I'm just talking as a layman. To me, this looks like a lot of legal mumbo jumbo since the very beginning, and a lot of very litigious lawyers. And there's a lot of them out there, and they want to sue, and they want to make their careers, and they're willing to be a part of these malicious narratives.
And Karen, I'll take it a step further. It's something I've not seen in my 20 years of practice. And I know, obviously, lawyers well, and Julio, you too. I have not seen such a politically charged legal bar on both sides as since 2016. What I mean by that is I have some good friends I've known for 15, 16 years. I guarantee you, when I post this, they will be angry at me. Never experienced that before in my life. There are folks out there, there are lawyers who I know are good practicing lawyers that are using the skill sets in their training to help a political cause. Predating 2016, would lawyers get involved in political campaigns, including me? Absolutely. But would you be using it to try to ultimately, after an election, undo an election. And all you have to look at is the lawyer that Christine Blasey Ford hired in D.C. back with Judge Kavanaugh, now Justice Kavanaugh. That lawyer, Debbie Katz, is as partisan as you get. Yeah. Look her up on LinkedIn. It's still out there, predating what happened with Justice Kavanaugh. She was, I mean, you're talking about highly partisan stuff. So to your point, Karen, you've got armed lawyers. Right now, everybody's watching Game of Thrones. We have White Walker lawyers. That's what it feels like out there. And people already hated lawyers. Imagine what it's like practicing with them.
Well, there's such a saturation of lawyers in America. I know in Florida, we have something like 87,000 lawyers just in the state of Florida. And I don't know, don't quote me on the statistic, but it's a huge number.
It is. And one thing that I think a lot of people would like to talk about, Karen, and I think the president could be extremely helpful there, especially Ivanka and some of the other people in his administration, is school loans. You know how many people I meet regularly that are going to law schools that aren't state law schools that have an enormous amount of debt, and they don't know what the job is when they end up getting out. And I'm not asking people to feel sorry for lawyers, but feel sorry for some of these kids who are going into law schools thinking they're coming out with their dream legal job and are so far in debt, they have to take a job that they don't want to do anything. They don't want to touch it in some type of legal sector. And they have to do that for 10, 15, 20 years to get out of their debt. That's that consumer issue with certain of these law schools, not just in Florida, but across the country. That's something I think the president could really put his power behind, but not when he's distracted by all this nonsense.
Yeah, he's got so many things to do. And, the perception of going to law school, you made up a very good point, is not, what it's really cracked up to be. You end up being a business owner, an entrepreneur, and all these things that I don't think law school necessarily prepares you for. And I think you're right. I think a lot of these lawyers go to school to get the title of being a lawyer and then become very litigious in their practice.
We actually passed dentists. I don't know how we did it, but we passed dentists in the last decade of being the most depressed profession. And again, mostly
a lot of competition.
Right. And put your lawyer joke in there. A lot of people would say we deserve it. And again, I market myself as a lawyer. I hate lawyers. Maybe we do. But back to what you're saying, Karen, and I know that's not the full purpose of the show, but when you're looking at why are all these folks on these different shows getting so charged up, a lot of them with law degrees, the anger that's out there. And I don't think it's just with lawyers. I work with doctors every day. I work with healthcare providers in my business. The student loan issue and debt issue in this country is significant. And Senator Warren's proposal that we're going to forgive all of this, that is so irresponsible compared to letting somebody like President Trump and the right smart wise elders committee come together and really look at the issue, not of student debt. I don't know how much we can correct for the people in debt, but for all those parents out there who are looking at their kids and wondering, do I need to send them to graduate school to get a better job? And the marketing that the graduate schools are doing. I think that's something that the president could really be instrumental in a second term on. I hope he is. And again, take lawyers out of it. Talk to doctors. That's a really depressed profession right now.
Brian, let me ask you a question. So going back to all this legal issues going on in DC, the second issue I think is really concerning is that we have this fight going on, this legal fight going on over his tax returns. And Mnuchin said, I'm not turning them over. And today, CNN reported that he could face quite a bit of jail time because he's not going to turn over the tax returns. What happens there, Brian?
Again, I hate to be the lawyer answer here, Julio, but could he? Yeah, could he be exposed to criminal liability or criminal exposure? Sure. Do I think that Secretary Mnuchin will? No way. And going back to really the president's taxes, which is this whole issue, ultimately, does Congress have the ability to try to press the president and get his taxes because they think there is a justifiable reason for it? Yeah. Do I think the president's going to fight them all the way through his first term and hopefully if he has a second term? Yes. Do I think he'll be successful? Yes. The reason being, president really knows how to use attorneys. I think that's something that we saw with the Mueller report, where he utilized Rudy Giuliani. He utilized other smart attorneys to not look like, I think even the Mueller team would agree that former mayor was being engaging with them. He was talking with them. He was making points with them. It was not a complete stonewall. And I believe that's what the president's actually doing on his taxes. He's trying to tell them, how many times does he say, look at his personal financial statements. Look at all the filings that he's had to do for almost 50 years with his business entities. This isn't an individual, with all due respect, Barack Obama or even George W. Bush, who may not have been vetted nearly as carefully as Donald Trump had for his business purposes. So long story short, Julio, my view is the secretary, if I were him and I was his legal counsel, I would dig in and fight. Ultimately, I think the president will serve out his 2 terms and not have to give up his taxes, and no one's going to go to jail for that.
Well, let me ask you this. So, the House is thinking that they're going to find some connection to Russia in the tax returns and some investments there. And I guess people invest in foreign real estate, foreign companies. What's the big deal there, Brian?
This all goes back to that premise that the president was working with Vladimir Putin to overthrow the United States election system. That's what it goes back to, Julio.
But how does that show up on a tax return?
They're going to say that if there's holdings and there's real estate and there's assets in Russia, that he would have to disclose that and would have been disclosing that before the president had determined to be a candidate, whenever that was, in the 90s and the 2000s. To your point, though, how many individuals, and you know this better than I do, you probably both do, how many individuals in this country have assets outside of this country that would show up on some type of tax filing? Does that make them a Russian spy? I would say no. And you know what I find interesting is often folks on the left, the social justice warriors and the civil liberties lawyers, talk about having to protect everybody's rights and civil liberties. But when you're talking about accusing a person of being a double agent, I've said in other media outlets, had the president been a double agent, he would have been the most infamous spy since Judas Iscariot. And that's what they accused him of. If the president could get accused of that, if after the Mueller report came out, the president still has to deal with this, what could happen to any of us?
I don't know. It's scary. I mean, I hope this leads eventually to tort reform of some nature to protect all of us, Brian.
And Julio, look, your instinct's good, but it's not tort reform. In an age of electronic surveillance, and that's the silliness of this on tax. Look, if they really wanted to know the president's conduct, I think before he was president, he was pretty active, I'm assuming, on his mobile devices. Assuming he has a cell phone, smartphone, iPad. That's all stuff that the government doesn't necessarily need a subpoena. They don't talk about this that much, but I've gotten to know some of the folks in the FBI and in cybersecurity. They're able to get into what's called open source information. If you were really looking and trying to make a case that someone had a connection to something else, when I risk stress test companies, I'm looking to see often if there's connections to things that are going to be exposures for my boards of directors. What you're looking at is what you can find out in the public domain on social media, on tracking people's what's called metadata for what they use in their mobile devices. I know this sounds futuristic in IT. They don't need tax returns. This is like going back to 1955, not going forward to 2025. And that's what scares me more, Julio. I don't know if you remember, I'm a big pop culture person, as you guys know. And there was a movie, Enemy of the State, with Gene Hackman, where everybody was under surveillance. And I don't want to sound like some crazy conspiracy theorist, but I'm telling you, in a day and age where anybody can find out almost anything about anybody, again, I protect healthcare companies from HIPAA and those types of things. That's what scares me more than tort reform. And I think we need to start on an issue last year that I really think got blown over. I know we talked about it, Julio, you and I, which was Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. And that data, how much everybody is putting out on social media and what can be found out about us. I'm telling you, you two, it would be alarming if you knew when you went to the doctor where all of that information about you right now is.
It is scary. Now, Brian, let me ask you another quick question. So, the federal tax returns, one thing. Now, New York's sitting up there. The House in New York is coming up with a new law. Basically, it says, hey, we can give you anyone's state tax returns, and we'll get that to you guys over in the DC. What do you think of that, Brian? Is that going to be legal? Are they going to be able to do that? Is that going to get challenged?
Yeah, it's definitely going to get challenged. I think where you have an issue here is when you're dealing with a state-specific issue, Julio, as compared to Congress. To me, when they're asking for things on these different committees in Congress, that's where, as we always see these people marching up there from Comey to Barr, you have very little wiggle room to get out of a subpoena from Congress. All that said, I think going back to what I said before, I think the president's going to be fighting that on his taxes. He's going to be fighting it in the administration, and Barr is on the Mueller report. In New York, you're dealing with the state, and it's a lot easier. Let me put it this way. For those folks out in states, and you know this, Julio, where you've got a state income tax and a Fed income tax. Not that you aren't worried about both taxes, but what's the one in your experience from an accounting perspective that's less visible, the federal or the state? It's the state. It's the same thing with legal. So New York pushing this issue, to me, they can tie that thing up, meaning the administration, for decades. I don't think that's ever going to see the light of day because it's going to have to go through so many different levels of the court system to get to somewhere where there's an ultimate decision.
And here we go, New York spending a lot of money and time, taxpayer money, to pass a law that we can, basically give Congress anyone's state tax return. And I don't know how they're going to pass it and then say they can do it retroactively, Brian.
No, exactly.
That's exactly it. I can sum it up in one word: Cuomo.
Well, Cuomo, and now we've got de Blasio, and you guys know we all spend time up in New York. The idea that that New York is this great place to point to for national politics is insane. It's insane.
I hope nobody feels that way, because I just think it's disgraceful at this point.
It is disgraceful, yeah.
It is disgraceful, Karen.
Hey, Brian, let me ask you another thing. Okay, so California Senate today has a bill they're going to pass that basically says if you want to run for president and to be on our ballot, you have to provide your federal and state tax returns to the state. Now, that's being followed by Illinois, New York, and some of the other states that are going to, set that as their new laws to get onto that presidential ballot. Now, I would say that President Trump could care less if he's on the California state ballot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter to him. He's still going to win as president without being on the state ballot for California. But is that legal? Because it seems like this is a federal vote, and the states are saying, hey, you got to give the tax returns over to get on our ballot.
Well, remember, it's a federal vote, but it's really 50 state elections, right? And the District of Columbia. So for our electoral college, it is a state level, Julio. So they may be successful with that. I quite frankly don't think it's going to happen by 2020, certainly by next year's election. And you raise a bigger point, which is, what is it going to look like 2024, 2028, 2032 for what are the prerequisites to be running for president? If the social justice warriors have it their way, it's going to be the job application from hell, right? Richard Lewis's famous line, who was going to want to run for president? You literally are going to have to disclose everything. You're going to have complete transparency on all of your social media, a clean social media, because in order to be able to if you don't have the president's historic instincts of being able to bob and weave around all of the critiques he gets, if you're just a pedestrian politician, I don't know how you're going to navigate having to disclose your tax returns in certain states. Basically, I almost consider it a pay to play. You have to give up all of your privacy, Julio, to now run for office. And I think the question we have to be asking ourselves, who are we left that's going to be running?
That's scary.
It is scary, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's pay to play. But what scares me is we see some of that now. You go back to social media, you go back to Soros and people that are funding, the Democratic Party, and you're talking about a pay to play atmosphere. You're talking about PR and weaving these negative narratives out in the media to influence elections. It's all about opposition research, and it's all about kicking the other guy down. It's become a very vicious environment.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to it, Karen, and it's just because I think it's an appropriate analogy. It's sweep the leg. It's win by all costs. It doesn't matter how you win. It just matters that you win. And I don't know, are we teaching this in school now? For all of us,
Brian, Gosh, we have so much to cover.
I know.
It's crazy.
We're into another show.
I know. This so much to cover. One last thing then, Brian, since we have your expertise, is now Trump is saying, and President Trump and maybe his team is saying, hey, listen, I deserve 2 more years to be additional 2 more years to be president because I didn't get to be president the first 2 years because of this whole Russian investigation. Anything to that?
Yeah, that's art of the deal. And you got to love him for that, because when I negotiate, and you know this, Julio, you're always taking a wide stance. And that's what he's minted that. That's quintessential Donald Trump. That's not going to happen. But I think going back to the legal point that I made, and I would make this, I know the president respects you, Bill, and Karen, and watches this. If there's a legacy that the president could leave on the legal side, aside from, does anyone hear any complaints about Neil Gorsuch or Brett Kavanaugh, which I find interesting for the war that was waged against Judge Kavanaugh? Nobody's criticizing it.
Yesterday's news.
I mean, the character assassination, I hate to bring it up again, Karen, but it's right. This man went through hell. And now that it's over, it's as if they don't look at any of his opinions. You hear nothing about it. But back to the point, Julio, I really feel that the president would have an impactful historical legacy, and I think he has the grounds to run on this in 2020. I know he doesn't want to paint himself as a victim, but say, look for future presidents. Do you, the American people, want to be tied up in these sweep the leg, petty lawsuits that are being thrown for political reasons against players from both parties? And you know what? If you gave true serum to Bill Clinton, and I'll wrap this up on this. I tell everybody, because I remember this, I went to Pepperdine right before Ken Starr became our dean there, and I had talked to former inspector general there, Dean Starr. But Ken Starr said that if you had not had the ability for Paula Jones to file a lawsuit while Bill Clinton was president, you would not have had Monica Lewinsky. For your audience, what's that mean? Monica Lewinsky came up in a deposition that President Bill Clinton had to testify under oath to during the investigation about Paula Jones. If the president, Bill Clinton, didn't have to do that, by 2000, he would have gone into that deposition, he may have settled it. We would not have had that whole period of history. Now, a lot of people may say we should have, I don't know. But I think that precedent is playing itself out again here. And it's going to just keep cycling, right? Let's be honest, guys. If there's a Democratic president, do we think this isn't going to come up again? Or a Republican president? To me, when you said tort reform, Julio, the major change that I would love to see is and quite frankly, folks, I think it has to be done by an amendment. I don't think the Supreme Court can do it, is saying that presidents cannot be sued for civil lawsuits during the time they are president. You have to toll it. I would call it the anti-Michael Avenatti bill.
Yeah.
These civil lawsuits and these lawsuits are out of control.
All right, so Brian's the lawyer that doesn't like lawyers. He doesn't do hourly billing. He helps his clients with legal issues across the country and helps them lawyerly different. I'm saying that right, Brian?
Lawyer differently, yeah. We are launching with our new brand and name this late summer, fall. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And as you know, Julio and Karen, I started Lawyer Differently, and our slogan will be where the billable hour ends. And it's to provide businesses with what we call budgeted hours, where we focus on their key risks. And I think tying this back to the president, he's somebody who would be in favor of a billable hour reform.
Brian, I appreciate this. We could go on, like I said, for hours. I mean, this could just go on all night. And this is so fun having you here and talking about this. And I'm so glad what you're doing for all the businesses out there and helping them as well. So, look, we'll get you back on right away because this topic is so interesting and it just doesn't end. And I appreciate all you're doing.
My pleasure. And thank you both for all you do. Anytime.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. And it was great. I want to say one thing real quick. Karen, can I say something real quick?
Yes, please. I'm so glad to be back.
Yeah, listen, I was in Greece last week.
Incredible.
And when I was there was terrorist acts. They went into one of the cathedrals and killed one of the priests.
Oh, I didn't know this, Julio.
When I was in Israel, there was bombing in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
And, we had more terrorist attacks over in France. So I was in 3 countries and 2 terrorist attacks, bombing in the other one. And I got to tell you that it is so great to be in a country with a president now that cares about our safety, cares about our protection. It's unbelievable when you're in these other countries and they don't feel protected. And they know at any minute there could be a terrorist attack. You don't feel safe on the trains there. You don't feel safe on the planes there. You don't feel safe at all. And their economies are horrific. They're horrific. In Greece, no one has any money. There's no stores open. There's no business. And that's the difference between good government, poor government, great government. And I tell you, they really appreciate President Trump over there. They understand what he does for the country in terms of protection, in terms of economy. They have a great deal of respect for him. And I observed that in 3 different countries. So I just wanted to end that note because we weren't here last week, but I thought that was important to say that because clearly we're very fortunate to be in a country with a great president that cares about our safety and he cares about our economy. And I think we're all very fortunate about that, right, Karen?
Very proud to be an American today and every day.
All right, great show, guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Hi, this is Julio Gonzalez with Your Money on Your Voice America Network. Co-pilot Karen. Karen, how you doing?
Great to be back.
Right, and listen, we have Brian back. Brian.
All right. Who knows? Technical oops there. Sorry about that. Kind of restarted the video, but thank you so much, folks, for watching that Your Money segment. I thought that was very interesting and finding about how all the taxes and the legal issues work here. Thank you for watching YourVoiceAmerica.tv tonight. We're on your internet here, I guess, 5 nights a week at 9 p.m. You can watch us on YouTube. You can also watch us on YourVoiceAmerica.tv. If you want to support us financially, you can become a member at the website, either monthly or annually, or you can donate to us at GoFundMe.com/YVA2020. People have been very generous in supporting us there. I'm going to be moving myself and the show to Washington, D.C. in the next 90 days. Want to get a studio set up there, start getting some of the big hitters into the studio for in-person interviews, really make this a top drawer new media show. It's fine. I'm down here in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. I was down in Palm Beach before this, but I really feel like I need to be in D.C. as 2020 comes up and be man in the town there, man on the street there, hobnobbing with the folks that are making it happen so we can make sure that Donald Trump gets reelected in 2020 and that we win back that House because we need to go into 2021 with the Russiagate thing gone, with so many of these deep state colluders and conspirators taken down. Hopefully we're going to see guys like Comey and Brennan and that sort of thing actually serving prison sentences for what they've done and then win back that House too. So we go into 2020 with a real mandate for Make America Great Again. Okay, folks, love you guys. I'm Bill Mitchell. You can follow me at MitchellVII on Twitter, and I guess we'll see you tomorrow night. Take care.
I am your voice. Your voice.